Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only. You think I'm messing with you? No, you. I'm not messing with you. I'm here on behalf of college football fans, and I'm here on a mission of mercy. If you cannot pass the COVID-19 protocols, if you cannot keep yourself from testing positive, you don't deserve to play football. It's that simple. We got college football programs that are able to do this. We got college football programs that swore up and down that they could do this. And here you are talking about packing a stadium with 90,000 people because you can. Only to find out 18 of your players and 5 of your coaches test positive for the virus in the lead up to what might be the biggest game outside of Alabama and Georgia this weekend. Now, because you can't pass the protocols to play a game at home, we all got to miss out on Florida versus LSU. Oh yeah, they rescheduled it for December 12th. Fat chance that game gets played. Because this was a game that Florida needed to have. This is a game that Florida needed to have. You went down to Kyle Field. You got beat down by the kids at Kyle Field. Even as you're trotting out Kyle Trask, who's a Heisman contender, and Kyle Pitts, who's probably going to walk away with the Mackey Award and would get the Biletnikoff Award if we were able to give it to him. Kadarius Toney is back there. And you got your Engage 8 defense with Todd Grantham, and still, you had an 11-point lead into the second half of a game against Ampersand U that you should have won. And now we got to deal with Jimbo Fisher talking all loud and proud about how he finally knocked off a top 5 football program called the Florida friggin' Gators. You are supposed to be contending for the SEC division this year. You have to win the world's largest cocktail party. Georgia's been able to keep themselves healthy. Missouri's been able to keep themselves healthy. Alabama's keeping itself healthy. Arkansas is keeping itself healthy. No, you, Florida, you're the reason we missed out on the only game we wanted to watch at 2:30. You're joining Baylor. Will not be able to keep yourselves clean. Just don't contract the virus. You told us that you could create these bubble environments. You told us that you could take care of your kids. You told us that they were more comfortable, better cared for on these particular campuses. And then we have reports of the kids saying that they had runny noses and coughs the Friday before the Ampersand U game, and they went out there and played football, which has got to make you feel great if you're a Texas A&M fan. Only to have what? To have this game rescheduled? You think this game is going to get played? Please. And now we've had this rash of conference championship games that have been moved to the last possible weekend they could be moved, which was the move before. Not that we particularly care when the American Championship's getting played. Not that we particularly care when the Conference USA Championships get played. But now everybody's encountering the same reality where it can happen to you. And contingencies haven't been made. Well, they're being made now. Florida, trying to get you into the college football playoff this year. Florida, Oregon goes 6-1 and wins a conference championship. They might get in because you couldn't keep yourself clean. Now we got 39 bowls for which everybody is eligible, which means you need to put the Rutgers Scarlet Knights up against the Vanderbilt Commodores because that's what we deserve. We deserve to see these two trash football teams play in December. That's where we're at. Going into what is supposed to be quite the fun weekend for college football. We had Baylor, Oklahoma State on the schedule. Gone. We had LSU on Florida on the schedule. Gone. I'm sure we'll learn about more that'll be gone by the end of this week because that's just the way that it's working out. Because whether or not you believe that this virus is real is past time. But even so, testing positive means that you can't play football. Those are the rules. We're talking about a Florida football team that would be under 50 scholarship players if they tried to play this weekend. And then let's assume that you lose that game to LSU. Then what? Who does that help? If you beat LSU, again, you beat a bad LSU football team. This was a game you needed the style points for. This is a game that you needed to win by 50. This is a game you needed to stop a mud hole in and walk dry the Go Tigers. And now what do we got? We got Scott Strickland coming out here talking about abundance of caution when he's got double-digit people on his program that have tested positive. I can understand how one or two can test positive. I can get that. We can all get there. I think everybody's got that. I don't think you can create a bubble that is college football. But I look at SMU, and they continue to be able to play football. Why? Because they have been the standard. SMU is finally starting to get the love I think they should have been getting in the polls for the last 3 weeks. Now we got University of Tulsa, Cincinnati as the marquee 11 a.m. game this weekend. The other game, the game that Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt are going for the big noon kickoff, is West Virginia, Kansas. And they don't even have the head coach. Les Miles got the virus. Meanwhile, people are hammering Neil Brown in West Virginia to win the Big 12 championship because they're plus 2,000. Oklahoma State's not going to have played a football game in 2 weeks. People are expecting them to be there. Meanwhile, we keep waiting on Houston to play more than one. No, we got to deal with Dan Mullen talking out of both sides of his, not just out of that bad side of his mouth on Saturday, talking about he daring the administration to go against what the governor said they could do, only to find out he can't keep them clean. Tell me, how does that make Dan Mullen look right now? Like a buster. Because all you had to do was say, hey, look, we lost a football game. Credit to their 25,000 fans that he swear up and down was full at Kyle Field. Kyle Field holds over 100,000 people. You talk about it was full. Stop that. Telling you, man, this college football coaching conspiracy stuff, I'm getting tired of it. You got a really good football team. They got beat. We got Nick Saban in the postgame, Dylan Moses in the postgame talking about Ole Miss had our defensive signals, even as Ole Miss is going at warp speed, like they're going to do something with your signals. Maybe it's that Ole Miss is a good football team. Same good football team that put up a bunch of points on both Florida and Kentucky. And we know damn well Kentucky plays defense. This is not the year to make excuses. This is a year to appreciate every game that gets played. We saw Tuesday night NFL football. That is a Maction night. That ain't the night that you're supposed to see undefeated NFL teams play. That is for Kent State versus Akron. That's where we are. Why are you pushing this? You know, I do have to give it up to Scott Strickland because he made the decision. And he had to let people know who actually runs this. Now, there's still something to salvage here for Florida. But perhaps going forward with a little bit more humility prevents you from being in this situation to begin with. Because this is a bigger deal, not because it's just Florida LSU, but because Dan Mullen had to come out here opening his mouth like that. Every other football coach knows not to tempt that. Every other one. Be grateful for the games you do get to play. Hell, if you go 0 for this year, I don't really think that unless you do something uncouth, you should get fired. It's just a weird year. Meanwhile, that's exactly what seemed to happen down there at USM. Jay Hopson just couldn't keep it straight and narrow. Bringing in these dudes that's questionable. In a year where nobody was saying that Southern Miss had to win a damn thing. We got Tom Herman on the hot seat. Fairly or unfairly. Which I want to get to because turns out Tom Herman's got one of the 5 most talented football teams in the country. The other 4 probably make the college football playoff. All things to bear in mind. So I have a pretty packed show with recruiting today, but that news just kind of got on my nerves. And I've been watching a lot of Glenn Ross here lately, and David Mamet's one of my favorite, writers ever. Like I watched Red Belt just last week. I got Chicago on the bookshelf. Y'all know that I read pretty aggressively. And then earlier, Amarius Mims decides to commit to the G. So you can check out that segment. But I want to switch gears to talking about Billy Bowman, who dropped his top 3 finalist for his services last night. Bowman is a high 4-star recruit, like just outside 5-star status here, who had been committed to Texas, but since decommitted from Texas and then named the top 3 that did not include Texas. They include Georgia, LSU, and Oklahoma for the dude from Denton Ryan, who plays both ways. Now, he projects his safety, but you'd be stupid not to use him like Jabril Cox was used at Michigan. You want to get him on the football field. He's got 10.84 laser 100-meter speed. He can fly. He's got tremendous hands. And going into this cycle, he is the number 5 overall player in the state of Texas. And y'all know that Texas puts out players. Texas, Georgia, California, Florida, those states put out talent. Even in a year where Washington is putting out 2 of the top 10 players in the country, Texas still contends with them player for player. Now, when I talked to the homie Colin Kennedy about Bowman, because Kennedy does a really great job of covering the state of Texas high school football. Matter of fact, during the Red River rivalry weekend, that man hit 4 high school football games. Okay? Keeps a very close eye on each one of these kids. And he's got tremendously high expectations for what Billy Bowman will be at the next level, regardless of where he goes. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, you got to feel really good about this. Because there is the gossip part of this where his girlfriend is on the OU softball team. I don't think that necessarily factors into where a dude goes to school, but then you talk to Kayla Kelly and you might get a different answer. I also think that Georgia has had a Paycom Jim Thorpe Award winner, in the last 20 years. I also know that when you talk about LSU, you talk about getting drafted defensively. Until last year, Oklahoma didn't have a defensive first-round selection for 10 years. Now Kenneth Murray Jr. has reset that clock. But you got to be able to show him you can develop him. LSU and Georgia can do that, and I think that's why they're on the list. But I think he's looking for a reason for Oklahoma to end up the place that he picks. So I'm going to be paying really close attention to what Billy Bowman decides to do. And knowing that nobody can take any visits, the FaceTimes, the Zoom calls become even more important, as do your win-loss records. Like, I don't think that Oklahoma makes this list if A, Texas doesn't suck, and 2, Oklahoma doesn't beat Texas in the Red River rivalry in a 4-overtime thriller that was awesome. I think all of those things work together to get Oklahoma on this list. And if Oklahoma is able to win out, I think they could win out with Billy Bowman. I think if you face some hiccups along the way, you leave an opening for LSU or Georgia. Difference here is Georgia needs a safety and has the space. LSU feels like a space for which Sage Ryan is just waiting and biding his time. But they're filling up pretty quick. And if they get a Sage Ryan, I'm not sure that they're going to take a Billy Bowman, though I would. You also need to factor in here, Oklahoma missed on Kendall Daniels or pulled the offer, depending on who you talk to. LSU missed on Kendall Daniels, and Clemson missed on Kendall Daniels. Now, Clemson filled their vacancy with Andrew Makuba, who is the teammate of one Latrell McCutcheon down there at LBJ in Austin. I think that at some point, Oklahoma is going to benefit because Oklahoma is the best of the rest. It's not where you want to recruit from. But if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. I'd like to think that Oklahoma's defensive turnaround might have something to do with that. But like as Alex Grinch said earlier this afternoon, Oklahoma's played great defense for very long stretches, but they've come apart in ways where it felt like they were looking at the scoreboard and then that was that. But they let him tell it, look, we're dangerously close to being called a good defense, and then we might mess around and end up there if we just put together some games. And Texas is a great example of that because the last 2 times that Oklahoma's played Texas, they've won, which means that Alex Grinch is undefeated against Texas. It also means that Oklahoma put together 14 sacks over the last 2 years of Sam Ehlinger and Herb Hand's offensive line, which is damning in and of itself. Because not everybody was kept after last year's 8-5 campaign by Tom Herman, but Herb Hand was one of them. It's another reason why Tom Herman is on the hot seat. You lose guys like Billy Bowman in the 2021 class, it ain't going to matter that you got to commit in Quinn Ewers in the 2022 class, which means that Quinn Ewers could be back on the market if there is no Tom Herman or Mike Yurcich over at Texas to keep him there. And we do know that Oklahoma was high on the list for Quinn Ewers, as was a place like Ohio State. All things to keep in mind and to keep close as we continue to talk about what he turns out to be or what he doesn't turn out to be, more to the point. So really, pay attention to Billy Bowman and what he decides to do. Pay attention to Texas high school football and how it continues to go. But more than that, LSU not being very good helps. Georgia being very good doesn't, if you're an Oklahoma fan, from that perspective. I'm not even sure there are many Georgia fans that acknowledge that Billy Bowman is a dude that they could get. I don't think they get that far out here, right? Like, every now and again, they go out to Arizona and get like a Keely Ringo. But I'm not sure that they're out here just acknowledging that this is a dude that they could go get. Otherwise, I think they'd be talking about him in a different way. This is weird. There's like 100 people watching and no person in the chat. Y'all got me thinking that the chat is broken. Wow. That's a first. All right. Well, we'll keep watching on that. So from there, I want to talk about Maason Smith and the 5 places that he has named as finalists for his services. So Maason Smith turned his focus to Alabama, Florida, LSU, Miami, and Georgia. Okay, Georgia making somebody else's finalist list. 6'5", 316 pounds. Just an absolute monster at defensive tackle. The number 19 overall prospect in the 21 class. Number 3 at the defensive tackle position. And he went in depth with 247 sports analyst Steve Wiltfong about each one of these spaces. And I want to add some context to each one of these as we go. So, in regard to Georgia, said, just the coaching staff, I talked to them a lot. They're really down-to-earth people, and they care. I like that in coaches. They have really good defenses every year. I know they don't put out defensive linemen that much, but that can definitely change, and they play great defense. You could do a hell of a lot worse to playing defensive tackle at Georgia. Same thing with LSU, to which he said, that's the hometown school. Remember, he's from the state of Louisiana. The relationship is definitely there. I have great relationships. They've been recruiting me since I was in the 8th grade, and I have great relationships with them. I talked to Coach O on the phone yesterday, and those are my people. Before Coach Pelini got in there, I wasn't that excited about their defense because they were a lot of 3-man defenses, more of a linebacker defense. When he got there, that changed up. I think that's also important, right? Like, one of my critiques of Mike Stoops' defense at Oklahoma is that when you run these odd fronts, you make it difficult for yourself to recruit defensive interior linemen because it's not star position for them. They are not asked to split people and go get tackles for loss. They're asked to eat up blocks so that linebackers can go make plays. Alex Grinch went back to a one-gap scheme. Neville Gallimore ends up a 3rd-round draft pick, and Kenneth Murray's 1st-round draft pick. I'm a fan of 4-man fronts. I'm a fan of one-gap schemes because I want to give all of my players the same opportunity to go eat. Okay? I think Bo Pelini running a 4-3 as opposed to Dave Aranda running a 3-4 matters there. And I don't think there's anything that Bo Pelini could do to get fired this year, though he could be on the hot seat next year if they continue to play piss-poor defense. They've given up 96 points in like 3 games. That ain't gonna cut it. That ain't gonna cut it. No. Regarding the Alabama Crimson Tide, Smith said the accountability they hold towards their players, they put out top-tier guys every year. That's really the end goal. Just the accountability and level they hold their players to is unreal. And I feel like you can never slack off over there, and if you put your mind to it, you can get stuff done. Now, it's Alabama. You know that that's an assembly line. You know that you come in there, they turn you out into an NFL draft pick. Just about whether or not you're going to go in the 1st round or the 5th, because we don't hear about too many Alabama players going past the 5th. You can do a whole hell of a lot worse than picking Alabama. Also add to that, they have 2 of the 3 top offensive tackles at Alabama for you to go against, right? J.C. Latham, Tommy Brockermeyer, and then there's James Brockermeyer, who's going to be playing some center or some guard. Like, he's going to get dudes to challenge him and to make him better. I would put Alabama on my top 5 list too, just on general principle. And then there's Miami, which I thought was an odd one to put in here, but here's his thinking. I took a visit to Miami last summer and I loved it. I love their facilities. I love the coaches, Coach Shroud, Coach Baker, Coach Diaz. They always talk to me, and to be honest, that defensive scheme is one I like the most. It's all out attack, and it would let me play free. I've been having a really good relationship with them the past year, and I definitely want to see them again. The U still means something to some of us, right? Like 2001 Miami Hurricanes is one of those all-time great teams, but really, Miami ain't been any all-time great since 2002. Add to that, if Miami would have been able to make it close against Clemson, I think you could probably include Miami as a real contender for Maason Smith. But seeing as they got beat down 42-17, I don't think that's what it's going to be. I think that Blake Baker also might not be at Miami next year because Blake Baker's a really great defensive mind. And they would have to pay him, I think, a little bit more to keep him from jumping to another great program. I like to see Blake Baker at Florida, but that would mean that Dan Mullen got to let go of Todd Grantham. We'll see how that goes, right? Because I want to see Brian Brown get an opportunity at Oklahoma, just like I wanted to see Pete Golden get an opportunity at Oklahoma. Both of those dudes have kind of been struggling here of late as defensive play callers. So that's my thinking on it. But Blake Baker was good at La Tech, and he's good at Miami. And then finally regarding Florida, said Florida's my dad's favorite school. And at first, I was really interested in them. Coach Turner is doing a really good job with the defensive line down there. They were top 3 in the country in sacks. To get to the NFL, you have to sack the quarterback. That's a given. He's a real good coach, and I like it in Florida. Me and Coach Mullen are always talking, and he's telling me it's great to be a Gator. Their coaches, they're all great, but you say that about all these colleges. So very clear to me in there that Maason Smith got him on the list because his daddy wanted him on the list, but I don't think that's where you want to go. And I think if it comes down to where you want to go, probably going to pick the place that's closest to home, which feels like LSU. But there's also been this widely reported, fact that turns to rumor that turns back to fact. And I'm going to unpack that here in just a second. But it is that Corey Foreman, number 1 player in the 2021 class at a Centennial in LA, wants to join Maason Smith as a package deal. The only 2 schools that are on this list that they both have offers to and that they're both considering is Georgia and LSU. Corey Foreman also took a trip to LSU just 2 months ago. And because the Go Tiger fam know what to do down there in Baton Rouge, they got his name on the marquee. They understand what it would mean to get Maason Smith and Corey Foreman in the same class. In a way that I think Georgia fans get it too, but I think LSU fans really want it. I think that's going to matter, especially for a hometown kid. And if you can convince Corey Foreman that this is the best place for him to be outside of USC and Georgia, or even Clemson where he still got an offer, feels like it could be a win for Ed Orgeron and them. Feels like even Bo Pelini couldn't mess that up. Be interesting to watch for, right? Because it turns to fact, turns to rumor, because those dudes will say at one point, we're not really that tied to it. We want to do it together. And at other points, they'll be like, yeah, we absolutely want to just play together. We'll see what it ends up being, right? So based on what they say, you got to take their opinion on it at that time. Knowing that Corey Foreman can't even play football right now also probably factors into what does he want to do in January, which is play, want to at least practice. You want to go through winter workouts. And that's the suck, right? Because there's hundreds of kids that aren't allowed to play their high school football and are just going to miss it because they want to early enroll. And that is where one Corey Foreman is now. So I'm waiting to see how some of these classes shake out, because if LSU get Maason Smith, get Corey Foreman, get Sage Ryan, wow. I mean, you're talking about Garrett Nussmeier, Corey Kiner. My goodness. Like, you got dudes. JoJo Earl, Rajon Davis. That's a nasty recruiting class. That's nasty, right? I mean, that's Ohio State nasty. That's Alabama nasty. That's Clemson nasty. It's nasty. Whereas Georgia is building this thing from the beef out, right? Because you got outstanding play on the offensive line, and you're slowly just being able to add skill players. It's almost as if Kirby Smart only tries to recruit the interior players, offensive line players, first. Like, everybody wants to get a quarterback in, and I get that. But outside of that, is he chasing running backs? Not right now. Chasing wide receivers? No. Is he chasing safeties? Not really. You know, like, he's building an offensive line and defensive line first because he wants to run the ball and he wants to control you on defense. And if he can make like Cardi B and do the controlling, that's what he's going to do. But that also is a hallmark of Nick Saban, right? Because Smart was a Saban disciple longer than anybody except Scott Cochran. Now Scott Cochran and Kirby Smart are both on the same squad, and that's a lot of fun in and of itself because there's so many Saban assistants all over. And I need to add this. Nick Saban is 22-0 against his assistants, which is stupid, right? It's just bonkers. Hey, I really want to see this one. And I would not mind Georgia getting a win in Tuscaloosa just to make everything a little bit more interesting. Because I still have Alabama picked to win the national championship because that was my pick in January. Because I just looked at him and say, where's the hole? And also the way that Nick Saban has been able to keep his kids on task in a way that, say, Florida has not, right? Baylor has not. LSU has not. That means a ton to me. Because that means that the culture is now exactly what every coach wants it to be. It takes care of itself. Goodness me. If you're Maason Smith, you got to take all that into account. I'm interested to see what he does. Still not anybody in the chat, man. Like, that's wild. Bet it's broken. Gotta be broken. Right? Like, who are the participants in this thing? Oh, no, man. Maybe it's just not populating on my screen. Because this is whack. Let me make sure that it's populating on y'all's screen. Let me get the exterior here. What's the exterior one say? Because, like, if I could see it on the exterior, that's going to make a lot more sense to me. Let me see. Where's the chat? Oh, see, it's on the exterior one. It's not on mine. All right, y'all in here. That's my bad. Like, I see it on the exterior one. Like, I got an internal view, so I didn't see anybody. Like, there was no chat populating in my back-end view. So I went to the YouTube page to see who was in here. All right, cool. All right. Let me see what we got in here. Let me say hi to the folks, and then we'll move on to another topic. Michael Vogt in here. Corey Karoff in here. Does TU have a shot against Cincy? Yes, TU has a shot against Cincy. Ain't much more than that, but, like, I'm going to be looking at Marcus Freeman to be the next head coach at University of Tulsa, know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm thinking at. I love Marcus Freeman. I need Marcus Freeman coaching my team. Dog. He said the G is Grambling State, not Georgia. Look, man, it can be both. Both of y'all cribbing from Green Bay. Stop that. It doesn't matter. As much love as HBCUs get on this channel, I'm going to need you not to come at me with that. All right? My God. It's like saying the U. Tulsa Union down the street says the U. Don't nobody come after them. It's not like everybody in college football is creative anyway. It's copycats, everybody. Everybody steals from everybody else. Yeah, man, I talked about COVID earlier. What's got in here? Too mad. Let's see. What else we got in here? Buckeyes are going crazy this year. You know, we'll talk about the Buckeyes here in another week. Let me see. Dude in here talking about I just saw the man's commitment. Yeah, man, I made that segment already. All right. So the 247 Sports 2020 talent composite is updated. And it's wild, right? Because, well, I'll tell you about it. So the 247 talent composite says how many 4 stars, 5 stars you have on the roster, right? How much talent you have on the roster. And usually you can guess probably 60, 70% of the teams that are going to finish in the top 10 on that roster, right? But Georgia's the top team in talent, which makes sense because they finished number 1 in 2 of the last 3 recruiting classes, with adding 5 stars like JT Daniels, right? Keely Ringo, Broderick Jones, Jalen Carter, Darnell Washington in there, and then you got dudes like Demetrius Robertson, right? Makes sense. Alabama in there at number 2, right? For all the reasons that we know. Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Drew Sanders, Dylan Moses, Patrick Surtain, and on it goes, right? Then we got at number 6, Clemson, okay? This is what adding Brian Brzee, DJ Uyunglele, right? And you get to keep guys like Travis Etienne and Amari Roger, right? You get to keep all those dudes. Say nothing of Xavier Thomas is on the team even if he's not playing. But what I found to be wild is that Tom Herman's Texas Longhorns are sitting at number 5. What? Like, I've been saying this for some time, but I think this crystallizes it. I've said this is the most talented Texas team we've seen since 2009. I said it going into the season. I said that was the reason to be terrified of Texas, and then Texas underperforms. Nobody does less with more than the University of Texas. Because if you look at their roster, it's the kind of roster that we would tell you to put the sticks down if you picked them on NCAA. It's the kind of roster that the computer cheats with. You have Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson, and Keontae Ingram. You got Jake Smith and Jordan Whittington. You got Tarek Black and Malcolm Epps. You got Jared Wiley and Brennan Eagles. And that's on the offense. That's before we start to talk about Caden Stearns, Jawan Mitchell, Joseph Asai, Keandre Coburn, Vernon Broughton. Like, can keep going here. The idea that Texas is a 2-2 squad through 4 games is maddening. It's maddening. And that's why people are saying I'm done with Tom Herman. It's because you've had 4 years to get this right, man. He's also 1-4 against Oklahoma. Okay. You know who, like, he's got 2 wins over the course of his career against Oklahoma. One of them's at Houston, right? They go 9-3 that year. 2018 in the Red River rivalry regular season game, only to get beat down in the Big 12 championship game. Meanwhile, Lincoln Riley's won 4 out of 5 against the University of Texas. Each time having a lesser, well, except 2017. So 4 out of 5 times he's had a less talented football team. What? Like, I can understand why you would get pissy if you are a Texas fan, because check this, right? You go from, my goodness, you go from being ranked number 9 to number 7 to number 5. Like, your roster keeps getting better, and you are 8-5, right? You go 10-4 in the best season that Tom Herman's had at Texas. Year before that, you're 7-6. So it feels like that 8-5 is actually who you are. Because you're not going to get to 8 wins this year. It's not happening. Like, Texas ain't winning out. You still got Oklahoma State on the schedule. You still got Kansas State on the schedule. You still got Baylor on the schedule if that game gets played. You still got Iowa State on the schedule. You barely beat Texas Tech, and they're not good. The same Texas Tech that had to beat Houston Baptist 35-33. Nah, man. I understand. Like, y'all know what it is. I don't even get down with Texas like that, like, personally. But I look at the roster and I say, how? How don't you make this into a national champion? Like, people talk about the Big 12 has never won a national championship in the college football playoff era. I'd be like, yeah, but they've only had 1 representative. So stop saying the Big 12 and just start saying Oklahoma. Till somebody else wins the Big 12, somebody else gets into the playoff. That's where we are within. And the talent composite. 2020. Okay? They were number 2 in 2016. They were number 3 in 2017. They were number 4 in 2018. Number 4 again, 2019. And then they had a recruiting class that finished number 64 in the country in 2020. The same year that they had Bryce Young committed to play. You had Bryce Young in the boat. Steve Sarkisian came and got him from Alabama with the quickness. As bad as Tom Herman has been, what is the defense of Clay Helton at this particular time? What is it? Is it beating Utah with a third-string quarterback? Because Utah ends up in the Alamo Bowl getting beat by Texas. Is it making the Holiday Bowl? Because they got run by Iowa. Like, what's the defense of Clay Helton at this time? What's it going to take for Clay Helton to just go back to being an offensive dude? Perhaps letting Graham Harrell run USC if Texas don't come get him first. I mean, my goodness. This at a time when places like Oklahoma State continue to just overachieve. You got Tylan Wallace and Spencer Sanders. Those are your 4 stars. You got a true freshman in Shane Illingworth, who's usurped Spencer Sanders. And then Chuba Hubbard turned into an all-world tailback. All while you were basically starting a wrestling captain at linebacker in Malcolm Rodriguez. You got nothing out of Calvin Buntage last year. You're hoping Trace Ford can be that dude that holds you down the way that Jordan Brailford did years ago. And Kobe Harvell-Peel is the best chance that they have of getting a defensive back drafted this year. Like, the idea that Oklahoma State is outperforming USC. I would lose my mind if I was an SC fan. Meanwhile, Oregon charging up. Oregon was ranked number 25 in team talent in 2018. 2020, they're number 12. That's a 110% increase. Because Mario Cristobal is just out there recruiting like an SEC West school. Kayvon Thibodeau, Noah Sewell, Justin Flo, Dante Manning. Meanwhile, don't look now, but Mac Brown got North Carolina headed in the right direction. And as bad as they are, they're undefeated. They're the number 5 team in the country. It's a soft 5. I don't think they're going to stay there. I mean, you give up the booty to Va Tech the way they gave up the booty to Va Tech, you're not going to stay there. But aren't they doing better than Oklahoma State? Aren't they doing better than SC? Texas? Let's not even include Oklahoma State, right? Let's not even do that. Because I get it. They're undefeated. They ain't played that many games, but they're undefeated, right? Cool. Texas and USC. In what world is Texas or USC supposed to be behind North Carolina? In football. Yikes. Meanwhile, UCLA, that's a fire. But we've already known that's a fire. And then there's the old Jim Harbaugh. All right, so Ohio State is one of the top, I think, 3 teams in team talent this year. Michigan is at 7 in 2017. Michigan is at number 17 in 2020. You land Dax Hill and Darian Green-Warren, and you still not even in the top 10. And Michigan's over here acting like they're supposed to win the game this year. Nah, man. Jim Harbaugh, one of the 3 highest paid dudes in college football. Make more money than Ryan Day. Doesn't even have a Big Ten East championship to show for it. Shows up to the Citrus Bowl, gets handed his head by Mac Jones. What are we going to do with Michigan? Probably the same thing we're going to do with Florida State, because as bad as Michigan is, Florida State sucks. I'm old enough to remember Bobby Bowden's Florida State teams. I remember how good those teams were. Winky, Warwick. I remember what it meant to be a Florida State Seminole, and it just don't mean that no more. That's not what it is. Marvin Wilson is the best you can do. You already traded out the quarterbacks. Getting embarrassed on national television. Year in, year out, week in, week out. I don't know what it's going to take for Florida State to get back to good, but Mike Norvell's first year is not going well. It's just not going well. Goodness. Let's check the chat. What's we got in here? Shout out to Clemson, number 4. Yeah, okay. Man, the Clemson dudes just come in here to say Clemson. telling you, don't nobody want to talk college football. People just want to talk about their teams. Let me see. Dude said, I'm paying attention. Hell of a live stream so far. Just at work listening to you, brother. I appreciate that, Robert. Shout out to you, man. Michigan doesn't have the stomach or the stones to make any changes. I mean, I don't think that's true. They went from Brady Hoke to Rich Rod. Rich Rod came out there running basketball on grass, running spread, no pass. Like, they'll change. It's just where they're going to go from Jim Harbaugh. Who they going to go get? Like, perhaps the move is Kerry Combs. Just go raid Ohio State. Raid Ohio State for the best position coach they got. That actually might be Larry Johnson Sr. So, hey, who wouldn't want to see Larry Johnson Sr. as head coach? I would. I think that he's got the kind of position that Bill Bedenbaugh has at Oklahoma, and that there's no amount of money. Like, I think Larry Johnson Sr. could be the first $1 million position coach, and it would be fine. Or not even the first. Just be $1 million position coach, and it'd be fine. Like, I think Bill Bedenbaugh makes something like $850,000 to coach offensive line. They're that good. You pay those men to be that good. Here I am giving Michigan opportunities to better itself, and Michigan fans just going to laugh at me. Okay. Look, man. I'm trying to help you be competitive. The same way that I try to help Texas be competitive. Like this is the worst OU team anybody's seen since 2014, and Texas lost to it. Even after the Big 12 refs gifted them 46 extra seconds, still lost that game. Now what you got? You got intense conversation about the school fight song. How far is Miami's defense away from being good? It was good. Greg Rousseau was going to make it great. Quincy Rote was going to make it good. Jalen Phillips solidified good. They just not good enough to beat Clemson. That's what it is. It's not how long before they get good. They are good. They're just not Clemson. Nobody in the ACC is. That's kind of the point. Like, if we're doing like a 4-team tournament, there's only 4 teams we would put in right now. Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Georgia. And you can make an argument that only Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State actually deserve to be there. Because, like, if we do this deserve thing that my brothers at the College Football Nerds channel do, you only come up with like 3 teams every year. I'm not a deserved type of dude. I'm not an elitist in that way. I want to see everybody get the same opportunity to get ran by Alabama. I want to see a 16-team playoff. I want to see 5 teams get an opportunity to run the table. Everybody loves the NCAA tournament. All of a sudden, they don't want it in college football. They play 24 teams in the playoff in the FCS. The same teams end up in the national championship. It's fine. More games, more inventory, more money, bigger audience, national television audiences that actually care about what's going on, because it's no longer the regional sport that it is when it's played in the Pac-12, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, as much as that is. Like, this would be a great year for it because can't nobody play no defense. You want to talk about having wide open football games. Like, knowing that Alabama can get 48 dropped on their skull by an unranked Ole Miss makes me giddy. Because right now, Clemson and Georgia are the only 2 football teams in America that can play defense. And they don't get to play each other off top. So if you can turn it into 63 versus 56, you got a shot to beat Clemson. If you can turn it into 56 to 65, you got a shot against Georgia. Right now, you're just hoping that you can keep it together if you are Georgia or Clemson. Alabama going to be all right. Because that's what Alabama does. They be all right. Let's see what else we got in here before we wrap it up. Best coach in Michigan history was an OSU guy, so why not? I mean, the best coach in Texas history was an OU guy. That's not the take you think it is, Corey. It's not. It's not the take you think it is. It happens a lot. Happens all the time. Just what it is. Let's see. Do you think we see a difference in Alabama's defense, or was Ole Miss's offense just that good? The answer to both of your questions is yes. Ole Miss is that good. They got buckets against Kentucky. They got buckets against Florida. They got buckets against Alabama. That's not a fluke. They're good. Kenny Yeboah is good. Matt Corral is figuring this thing out. Jerry and Ely is good. Elijah Moore is good. Now, as for Alabama's defense, like Nick Saban, I got to assume, has assumed the controls, if not of the defense, then of the defensive backfield. Like, he probably told Carl Scott to have a seat this week. I got it. Like, he probably took the way that they were getting torched just so personally. Like, here's the thing. Alabama put up over 700 yards of offense in that game, and Nick Saban was still pissed. Why? Because Ole Miss put up 647 yards of offense on Alabama. Never seen that before in my life. Never. I don't even think they put up 600 yards of offense in the game where Clemson handed them their head. Like, it's just not what I'm used to. You had a game where Najee Harris goes for over 200 bills, and you still only win by a, 15-point margin? You still give up 48? Dog. Could not be me. Could not be me. All right. I do believe that is going to do it for this episode. Please subscribe to the RJ Young Show podcast, wherever it is you get your podcast. Rate it, review it, leave a 5-star review. Really comments. They just like to show up here and tell me how much I suck. Shout out to Music Boy 14 who left a 5-star review. Said, love the podcast and the detail that is put into the show each week. From recruiting, game updates, coaching, and now COVID updates, RJ is one of the best to do it. No matter your team, you will love this channel. Hopefully Oklahoma and LSU pick it up next week. Well, Oklahoma did. Go Tigers didn't. And he was laughing about me saying that they're going 5-5, but now y'all 3 wins away from making me correct. Or 3 losses away from making me correct. So hold up. Hold tight. All right. I will catch y'all in like an hour. Doses.